This is the Military Bottom Line Podcast, episode 93.
But, certain diseases do run in families, but because of the way chemicals work on the genes, these things can be suppressed and never come to fruition at all.
Yeah.
But all it takes is a chemical or something to create that problem and to make it happen.
What's going on, everybody? Today, I am discussing a very important topic with Mark Burnett. Mark was born at Camp Lejeune in late 1950s, and he is here to talk about the water contamination litigation that is going on. And there was 30 years, plus or minus 30 years, of impacted individuals, whether they be military, civilians, or contractors. We're here to talk about the contamination that took place, how it impacted lives, and how it's still impacting lives. And so if you really just want to know more about the water contamination at Camp Lejeune, or maybe you want to know more about like how these litigations happen, or if you're concerned about how you might be impacted or how your family might be impacted, definitely stay tuned. Mark's got an incredible resource for you to get started in the research and really just get involved with the litigation if you qualify. I really hope you guys enjoy this discussion, learn a lot. I learned a ton about this issue, and so I really hope you guys stick around and see what Mark's got to offer. Welcome to the Military Bottom Line Podcast, where we learn from veterans and those currently serving how to make the most out of a military contract. We're here to motivate, inspire, and help you leverage your service to positively impact you professionally, personally, and financially during your military career and beyond. Good evening, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you, Jason?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the time this evening. You've got an important message to share, and I'm grateful that you reached out because I know that this has affected a generation or two, maybe even three of people that have been stationed at Camp Lejeune, and probably other bases too that are still maybe unknown. But I look forward to getting into that.
And if you want, you say unknown. Actually, it is estimated by all the attorneys that 750,000 people that were at the base have not signed up yet.
Wow.
So that's a huge number. Only 200, I believe we're at about 260,000 have signed. But that leaves the other half of that million.
Well, let's start with you introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what mission you're on.
Sure. My name is Mark Burnett. I was born in Camp Lejeune. I was in utero, which means basically my mom was carrying me at the time I was in Camp Lejeune. And according to the records I looked up, I was conceived in Camp Lejeune before my dad went out and did some maneuvers. So I stayed there after that for a couple of years in Camp Lejeune, and then went to Cherry Point after that point, after that side. What got me interested in this was that I started having actually medical issues. During the COVID time, I noticed I started having some issues walking and tripping over things and stuff like that. And after everything settled down, I found out I had Parkinson's, which is 70% higher in Camp Lejeune in people who went there than any other base. So it is huge there. So that was red flag day. That was when I'm like, okay, I've got to look into this. And that's when I started researching. And that became hard to research, very hard.
Sure. So when you were diagnosed with Parkinson's, you had already known that fact about 75%, 75, what was it? 75% more likely to have it if you went to Camp Lejeune?
I did not. When that actually happened, and I had actually earlier symptoms of Parkinson's I did not recognize, nor did my doctor. So years before, I was having some issues, but didn't put two and two together, wasn't really familiar with what was going on at Camp Lejeune with the contaminated water at that time. And even though I was born there and stories about it, it just didn't register until I said Parkinson's. And I knew that Parkinson's was a track one disease at that time. It had been announced that it was one of the first diseases that they were looking at from Camp Lejeune. So it was a huge red flag for me to get involved and try to understand my own situation.
Got it. Got it. And for, for those, I'm not medical at all. And I've heard of Parkinson's. What is it exactly, and how does it impact you?
Sure. Well, one of the most famous people that have Parkinson's is Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Michael J. Fox Foundations is a Parkinson's foundation, and essentially he got it diagnosed with it when he was 29.
Mm,
And actually, if you watch some of the Back to the Future movies, and you start to understand he has Parkinson's odd movements, you see those odd movements.
mm.
They present themselves, in my opinion, even then. And he was obviously diagnosed early. Now he's real bad. Basically, it's movement disorders, it's memory disorders. When I'm on the keyboard, my pinkies will start going up and down, or my hand will jump up and down. So
It's a neurological
it
disorder.
is neurological, yes.
Okay.
And essentially, it's caused by Lewy bodies, what they call Lewy bodies in the skin area. I mean, in the body that get to the brain and create movement issues among other problems.
Yeah. So I mean, serious disease. I don't want anybody to think like, oh, like, just another disease that's kind of
Yeah,
floating on the ether that we're hearing of something every day, and so it's easy to get the significance to get lost on people.
right.
Um, but I think you're one of many that have been impacted by contamination at Camp Lejeune specifically. Um, what what is, I guess, what time frame are we looking at for this contamination issue?
Sure. From 1953 all the way to 1987. So anyone who was at Camp Lejeune for 30 days, non consecutive, that's a very important point. They do not have to be there 30 days in a row. They can simply visit there, come back, visit again. As long as it's 30 days within that time period from 1953 to 1987, they are eligible. And I think so many people, maybe 750,000 people, misunderstand that.
Mm. What year? So did they discover this contamination in 1987, or what year did they discover this contamination?
Actually, it does seem it was discovered earlier than that. There were actually things in the Camp Lejeune newspaper that I found that show that they were shutting down wells and stuff in the earlier 80s because of contamination. Um, but there was a cover up. I mean,
Yeah,
to
sure.
be honest, they just literally, the base commanders at the time put out a brochure and said nothing to worry about. Everything is well documented. That brochure is out, and he, got quiet about
Yeah.
it. And it unfortunately took legal groups to get involved and it to pass. I believe the Senate or Congress had to get involved, one of them, and pass a bill, which was the PACT Act of Camp Lejeune, which at the time President Obama signed, which gave essentially extensions to allow people to get, reimbursed for this, depending on the type of disease they had and the severity that they had. Many different, how long they stayed on base, multiple components.
Mhm.
Um, and the problem is that it never really got going. Even though all that got passed, the government essentially did nothing about it with the people who filed. They just let it go. And only recently, I believe we're only up to, I think, 26 people. No matter what the Google says, only 26 people have actually taken any money or gotten anything
Are you
that the
serious?
government has done for us. Even
Wow.
though we're talking a million people, you
Wow.
know, those are huge, huge discrepancies in
Yeah.
what's going on. Okay.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. What is, when we're talking about contamination, what is the contamination specifically?
Sure. There are a number of different chemicals, and I don't know them all, but TCE, I believe, is one. I believe the other one is PCE. There's benzene, which is kind of like a component of gasoline. and there's a couple other chemicals that are involved. It's about 5 total.
Okay.
Uh, some of them, they've all been studied by the government. The government did get involved, set up a group to study it, of scientists to figure out what these chemicals do to the body, what happens, and they're the ones who have really set the tone for this is what we saw. You know, we interviewed people, we went out there, we know what these chemicals do, and realized that this is how people were getting problems, and these problems range. We're on track 1, which is 5 diseases, and they're already talking with judges about track 2 and 3. So
Mm.
we're looking at 15 different diseases here in a short order, and they plan to add more tracks.
Wow.
So what I think is a big problem for people, and another reason I set up chemicalcasualties.com, was to allow people to come in and say, you don't need to talk to a lawyer or nothing. I've got over 500,000 names that are
Mm.
in the Camp Lejeune newspaper.
Mm.
Everyone from the football player to the guy who won an award in a pistol shooting championship.
Interesting.
So
But that's
they
how
can
you
come in and look.
that
Free.
yeah, getting a little bit ahead of myself, but as you say that, because I was reading your bio and what you're talking about the newspaper. So you sifted through 30 years of newspapers just to see names that came up on Camp Lejeune during that time period.
For is we when we got done with the numbers, and I'm a database expert. I've built databases for large companies before,
Mm.
so my familiarity with IT and databases came in handy. I knew some buddies that were great coders, and I said, hey, we need to do this because the government hasn't done it.
Yeah.
There's archived data, but you can't search it, so
Mm.
how does anybody find anything?
Yeah.
So part of it, we went through 40,000, just about 42,000 pages of
Wow.
the Camp Lejeune newspaper that covers those areas. Actually, we go back a little bit, all the way to 1950 to 1990, and I'll explain later why we do that. So with that, we got 42,000 pages. We got over 500,000 names out of those. I should call them name incidences, because if, let's say, Mr. McGregor was on the football team and he got mentioned 3 or 4 times for making a touchdown at different times, he'd be in there 3 times.
Yeah.
Good though, because if you played football, you obviously practiced, you obviously drank a lot of the contaminated water.
Mm.
So walking into a court with that kind of evidence from the paper is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And there is every single lawyer is telling everybody, we have too many cases. We can't go look for data for you.
Mm. So is that that's kind of the baseline of your research is from the Camp Lejeune papers. And it's kind of, if you're, if somebody were to search their name, then and they see their name, that means that they were mentioned in the paper, but only that person can determine whether or not they were there for 30 days or not.
Yes, that is correct. Although, if the paper mentioned them multiple times and we're able to show them multiple times, then that obviously would show it.
Sure.
Or it may show that they re-enlisted at
Mm.
that time, or they got an award for that. A good example of that, an incredibly good example, that civilians are also allowed to file.
Mm.
So if you're a civilian working on the base, which there are many,
Yeah.
they gave awards for 5-year and 10-year service, and that was also listed in the paper. So if you get that, you've proven your case, even though militarily wise you weren't listed, so
Yeah.
you can't get military records for that.
Mm.
So in that, and there was a record fire in like the 1970s, which destroyed a lot of the medical records and stuff like that. I've already ran into one lawyer who said we spent 2 years trying to find a gentleman that was in Camp Lejeune. He said his family was there and everything, and we just happened to be talking nonchalantly. And I said, "Hey, let me look. Let me check it out."
Mm.
In 8 minutes, not only did we find the name, we found his wife's name, all the information, and showed it to him, and he was floored, because it was the
Wow.
first time they had ever proven that he was actually there.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is significant. I know, my audience is is, maybe they're the children or the grandchildren of people that were stationed there.
Okay.
Um, and so are these should these people be going to look up their parents' names or their grandparents' names, or I mean what degree of the family tree um is connection sufficient for filing a claim on this?
Sure. As long as they can open an estate, okay, which obviously would be able to do for a parent or have another relative help them open the estate if that's the case. As estates are accepted. So, for instance, for my mom, who suffered greatly um, having me, and in her second and third trimester was very, very sick,
Mm,
and she didn't know why. They called it toxemia back then,
mm,
which was toxic things in the blood. Didn't know what it was.
yeah.
But I was born, and I made it. But the point being is, I'm filing for her and opening an estate and filing for her also,
Mm.
based upon that, because she suffered greatly because she decided not to have any more children after that because she thought it was something with her and she didn't realize
So in a
that
state, forgive me, is she still around? Is she still with
no,
us?
she's passed away.
I'm sorry to hear that. And you can still file for her even though she's no longer
Ab-
here.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. You can. That's fully accepted by the government. That's fully accepted by the lawyers that you can open an estate and file on her behalf.
And that would be, I mean, what's the benefit of that?
Who's her heirs? If her heirs happens to be, in my case, me, because that's how it's listed, and most people would go to the children, of that parent,
So it would be
then
back pay,
oh,
basically. To
yeah,
wow.
okay. We're
Okay.
talking settlements for Parkinson's is probably one of the highest. I mean, they've been talking numbers in the million, dollars to settle, because Parkinson's is a long-term disease.
Mm.
If you were to go in and have a cancer or something that was covered and they were able to cure you and get you out, well, obviously that wouldn't be covered as much, but obviously it would cover a lot. But if you have a long term incurable disease, then you get a one time settlement. There is no limitation. It's not a tort. It's not any other kind of litigation. Each person is on their own merits. So that's a totally different situation than any lawsuit. As a matter of fact, the lawyers are saying it's the largest lawsuit ever in U.S. history.
Wow. Wow. I know that, the most recent one that, my generation is privy to and experience is the 3M earplug one.
Right.
And I'm fairly confident that, those payouts are happening now.
Right.
But there's a big push to get it, as many veterans to sign on with that as possible.
Right.
Um, and so, for those that maybe missed the boat on that one or benefited from that one, I think, yeah, it's absolutely worth. I mean, it's a simple search, to
No, you're exactly right. I made it so simple and I made it free to search so that it'll come up. But it's important when you search. This is a very important factor here when you search our database. Do not try to put in the person's full name
Mm,
because in the paper, sometimes they would list like my father's name, J.R. Burnett. His name is Johnny,
mm.
Randolph Burnett. But they didn't always put that. Sometimes they put JR. Sometimes they put Staff Sergeant Burnett. You know, it could be in any combination. So if you put it in wrong, or you try to put the full name, it's going to say, "Well, I can't find that because it didn't match exactly." So it's better to start with just the last name, put that in at chemicalcasualties.com. You just go there, go to name search, put it in, and you're going to get a list of everybody that we have found. And I would say we're about 95%. So, what we allow you to do, if you can't find the name and then go to the next form, which would help us get more information to get it down better, we have to do the research further after that,
Mm.
and pull the PDFs for you and do everything else, get you the government doc number so it's official for evidence and things like that. If you can't find your name or your parent's name or a relative or even a friend, um, then turn around and it'll allow you to continue. And it captures more information. Tell us when they were there. Tell us everything about them. Where were they? And then from there we can do a different search we can't do online that allows us to go through and try to find those names. And we found some that way.
Mm.
But typically the one search is going to hit 500,000. So typically that hits. Where it gets confusing is you need to be careful. Was the let's say a tech sergeant, or did he become a staff sergeant later? And
Yeah.
you're looking at the tech sergeant, he goes, "Oh, that must not be my dad. My dad was actually a tech sergeant at one point." So, okay, be careful, because if you try to delineate it too far down, you're not going to get necessarily what you want. Okay. Take the time to go through the list.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. And I guess where are we in this litigation process? Is this already, are payouts already happening? Are people already being compensated for this? Or are you in the process of getting as many people to participate in the litigation to make it to a certain point? I mean, where, again, I'm not a lawyer. So like, how does this
Sure.
process work and where are we?
And neither am I. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an evidence hunter, and I became that I had to. I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
So, the main thing again, back to that, like only 26 people have taken the deals that the government has thrown out kind of early.
Hmm.
Hundreds of those people have denied those deals.
Mm.
So the government is trying to throw out very low end deals and say, here, take it. And some people are taking it. It's kind of like, I'm willing to take the low amount and just get it done. But the big payoff, obviously, for everybody is to wait until these things go to court,
Yeah.
let judges get involved in it. Right now, they're getting ready to do what they call bellwether cases. These are cases where they're taking Parkinson's cases, they're taking the bladder cancer cases, and all these other kind of cases, and they're going to try them and try to understand, well, what's the value of each one of those.
Mm.
And that starts us off with sort of that pyramid. That once they get that, then from that, well, how are you affected more? Maybe you were in the machinery area. Maybe you worked in the water plant itself. Unfortunately, Camp Lejeune had a huge steam plant. So if you can imagine a steam plant sitting there pumping out steam,
Yeah.
that steam plant produced, in the paper, we found out 200,000 pounds of steam every hour.
Wow.
And it heated the base, but
Mm.
unfortunately, highly unfortunately, they used that steam to cook the food in the mess hall.
Oh my goodness.
So it gets sickening when you really read it, and you really got to have a stomach for what I found.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. And the person who reported on that was the person who ran the steam plant. He said, "Yeah, we used it to cook the food."
Wow. Oh my
I don't think you could have gotten away from it.
Yeah.
you know.
Wow. So it doesn't sound like individuals have to actually have been diagnosed at this point in order to qualify.
That is correct. What is happening is that you shouldn't wait. Number one, there is a deadline on filing for this, and that's August the 9th, a very important deadline.
August 9th, like 2, 3.
Right. Correct.
Wow. Okay.
If you're listening to this, anybody jump on chemicalcasualties.com and look up a name right away. And if you don't have a lawyer, we have lawyers that we work with. Because if you try to file by paper and you mess it up, which you can do, you can go online and file. The lawyers have a little secret they don't tell you about, some of them, that they can file via Excel spreadsheets. All they need is 5 elements of your information. They get it, they hit it, that automatically files with the government, and it's done. You're filed. You're in the case. And if you say, I don't really have anything right now, I'm not really sick now. No, but you were there for 30 days. And so therefore, they'll do what's called medical monitoring. And the medical monitoring will assist you. And if you then get something later, then you can open up the case. Now, the government does have 6 months to settle with you, once you open a case and give you an offer. But so far, out of the 260,000 people, They never went back and offered anybody. And the way the rule reads, if they don't offer you, you get to sue them.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. So
Yeah.
my, my first question is, I have there's a lot of these lawsuits. Every couple of years something comes up,
Oh, yeah.
especially for veterans, and we get hit up with, hey, if you did this during this time or use this equipment, whatever, sign up. And
Right.
I'm always, I'm like, I'm fine. I don't need to. I don't. The lawyer's going to take most of the money I qualify for, anyways.
Sure.
So I self-admittedly kind of get stuck in that thought process, and more often than not, I just kind of let the time go by, and I don't put my name in. Um, Speak against that. Like, let me know and
Sure.
let others know why that's a bad mindset to have.
Well, I compare it to the lottery.
Yeah.
People go out and buy a lottery ticket and they spend over the year, a couple $100. Let's just say they spend $500, trying to win a lottery and they don't win anything. They've
Mm,
wasted $500. Okay. This is sort of guaranteed. If
mm,
you were there those 30 days, okay, and you file, which is not going to cost you anything out of pocket, because again, the lawyers will take a percentage of that amount, and in some cases, that's up to 40%, depending on what lawyer is dealing with what lawyer. Okay, but I'll address that in a moment. The thing is that 40% or 50, or I should say 60% of $1 million is what it is.
yeah, yeah.
Right. It's not bad. It's not a horrible thing. Um, and you're sort of getting locked into it because sooner or later, with this many cases, one judge down in North Carolina said, look, this will go on as long as the Roman army lasted if we goof around and don't get it done.
Mm,
And that was his statement. And what he meant by that, essentially, we've got to expand this. We got to make this simple. We got to get people in and out the door because we have too many people and we've got to make it happen. So there's a couple things going on. One is right now on Congress, there is a bill, and I don't recall what it is. Maybe you can find that bill for me, JR. JR, the bill for the Congress right now. It's like 8450. See if you can find it. Um, there's a bill going on right now, which is a technical change bill, which basically means that they're going to limit lawyers to 25%.
mm,
They're going to speed up trials by, instead of having those only in North Carolina federal courts, they'll now be on East Coast federal courts in states like where I'm at, in Maryland, okay, and other places. So this will expand quite a bit quick because they know they have to. And that bill is a technical change, so it doesn't require many votes. It's just more of a technical change. And if that passes through, then everything's going to start moving much faster.
interesting. I mean, a little bit of a sidebar. Do you think that if the lawyers share was cut to 25%, do you think there would be as many lawyers eager to take on these long, arduous cases? I mean, these things,
Yeah.
it were 10 years plus or minus.
Yeah.
Like this could be a significant portion of your career. Do you think?
Yes. Well, I won't name the law firm, but I know one law firm has already borrowed $50 million to cover this.
Wow,
Okay. They're betting on what they're going to get.
wow.
And investment firms are getting involved. $50 million is a whole lot of
Invest?
money to
No
get
kidding.
one law firm.
So you've got, oh my goodness, this is really cool. So you've got investment firms that they'll basically fund these litigation processes for however many years
To the
because they're
back.
not confident that the government will pay it out.
They know they will. Yeah, because
Wow.
they're stuck in this. There's too much going on, and with the what I call the bellwether cases coming together, where basically we have a pattern to go by, where a judge can just simply say, "Come on in. Okay, you proved this, this, and that. Okay, here's the normal. What makes you different? Because I've already figured the number, based on the bellwether cases. So where you fall into that, okay?
Mm,
And if you have like, well, I worked in the machinery department and I sprayed all day long steam with the TCE cleaner or whatever like that. Well, okay, that's a lot worse. Yeah, that's bad.
yeah.
So, or the longer they were there. So it's not, again, it's not a case where everybody gets the same dollars. I don't think anyone's going to get the same dollars. I think everybody's going to be different.
This is really interesting for for context. For anybody that's looking like trying to get an idea of this process, I just watched the movie. I think it's called Dark Waters, uh,
Uh-huh.
about DuPont and Teflon.
Right. People have been telling me to watch that. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to now.
Great movie. I mean, like kind of depressing, but also like very very interesting to watch. And it kind of shines an interesting light on like the whole scenario that you're talking about. These long litigations, lots of contamination, lots of impacted people. How do you dig around for the evidence? How do you track everybody? So it's given me some perspective on this. But if you haven't watched it, I would recommend it.
Yeah, I will definitely watch it. Yes, yes. I think it'll give me. I think what gave me the most perspective was when I started going through the paper just to look for my own and
Mm.
finding evidence in there that astonished me. I mean, these were the paper was written for Marines by Marines,
Oh.
so they didn't know anything about chemical contamination. They
Mm.
just wrote what they saw, and they were writing about the soldiers that were there. They were writing about what their base did. So it was innocent in that regard.
Mhm.
But what's interesting was when and this is the reason we go past the dates of 1987 to 1990 and back to 1950 versus 1953 start date, is that there are events that happen prior and after
Mm.
that may affect you walking into a courtroom and going, well, I stayed there a little longer and then I got an award showing I was there 5 years or whatever like that. But that didn't happen until 1990.
Mm.
Okay, well, there you go. Here's that document. But what I found, which first made me really think, is I was born in 1958. And in 1959, on page 4 of the Camp Lejeune paper, it said that there was a reversal in the sex ratio of those born.
Huh.
So, in other words, essentially, it was girls out. I remember it was girls outweighed men in the number of births. Okay, it was one of the ratios. It was backwards,
Mm.
and they caught it, and they talked about it. They had no idea what it meant. They had no understanding, but they reported it in the paper. When I researched that, places in Norway and other places said that this only happened when a chemical plant blew up nearby
Interesting.
or overspraying of a field created a town to get sick,
Wow.
caused this reversal.
Wow.
So I actually have it in one of my evidence reports people can get because I went through and documented where these things are, and yet not one lawyer has picked up on this. Okay,
Wow.
that happened, and I only did it accidentally because I just kept looking. I
Yeah.
knew my father was still there, and we were still there, and here comes across this, and I don't know how many other times it happened. I still looking in the paper to see if there were other of these reversals because that points directly to chemical contamination right there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. Um, okay. So it sounds like, if it's, if I were directly impacted, I spent 4 years or, however many
30
months,
days.
30 days. Yeah. As little as 30 days at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987. Super easy for me to search and file my name. If I look up my father's name or my grandfather's name or my mom's name and they're no longer with us, what I then have to create a trust to then have that trust file.
You would open in an estate
The state.
in your particular state where they passed away, whatever, and you would open that, and assuming you would be the executor of that, you would then file on their behalf or the person's behalf, and that's exactly what I'm doing with my mom is filing on her behalf, but I'm also her heir.
Yep. Yep. Which you get to determine because you're setting up the estate. Yeah.
Correct, and because she decided not to have any other children because of Camp Lejeune,
Yeah.
I don't have any brothers or sisters.
Gotcha. So, that to me, that'd be kind of intimidating. It's like, all right, I look up, I see my mom's name on there. Great, cool. Now what? Who should, somebody in that position be getting in touch with?
Number one, if they already have an attorney, they should talk to their attorney that they have. And we have a checkbox there. Do you have an attorney when you get to that end of the forms?
Uh,
And we ask them that. If they don't have an attorney, or even if they do and they don't specialize in Camp Lejeune type litigation,
hmm,
they should really contact us. We have our phone number right on the website. They can call me or one of my son, either one of us. We work the phones, or they can email us, whichever they'd like to do, on the chemicalcasualties.com site. And they just simply, we will point them in the right direction of lawyers that can do this speedwise. I mean, they're literally set up to go, give me these pieces of information I need, which is, again, is like 5 pieces of information.
yeah,
We'll get it filed and they zip it right through. All they have to do is electronically file it.
got it.
So the problem is, and this has happened, people filled out the form wrong, by going to the government site. I'm going to save a few bucks, or I'm not going to pay the lawyer. Okay. And they're blown out. And
Yeah,
this has happened. I've heard some horror stories where it's like you didn't do it right, or then you went to the lawyer and they filed it. So both filed. Guess which one the government picks?
the
The
one that's
one that filled out wrong. Right.
gosh.
So, and you're done, that's it. You don't get in. So to me, you know, like you might say, okay, I'm going to pay that lawyer 40%, or if the new tech bill goes through, then it'll be 25%. It's zero if you don't file.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's zero, you get nothing. If you get a disease, the worst thing you can have is not a cure. I guarantee you, with Parkinson's, I'm dealing with neurologists and stuff, and I'm telling them all to, what? You can take your 1950 drug and throw it away. I
mhm,
want, I want to know what's new. And that's what I'm trying to do, is find the newest. There's cures on the way, like everything.
sure.
And I want to make sure I'm leading that. If I have to get in a trial, I'll get in a trial. I'm
Yeah,
not afraid of that.
yeah,
I don't want to have this disease. I don't deserve it.
yeah. No, absolutely. It's yeah, it's heartbreaking because I know, surely your parents,
Oh,
had they known, they would have, taken different actions. Uh,
right,
as a new parent myself, it's scary to think about something that you're just totally oblivious to that would impact your kid's life like that.
yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
we look at baby bottles now having, BTTs or something like that, some other kind of chemicals in them and stuff. We don't know what happens to that later.
yeah,
Here, unfortunately, the nasty part about it, it tried to be covered up.
yeah.
That didn't work. Um, and in my reports and my evidence reports, which everyone can download, those cost $95. Okay.
Mm,
But if you buy them, and you get them, one of the things I have is I moved from Cherry Point after 3 years, I think it was, I'm sorry, from Cherry Point to Camp Lejeune. I said that backward. From Camp Lejeune to Cherry Point. I then found on the paper that Camp Lejeune made all the bread and donuts
mm,
for Cherry Point. So they used water,
interesting.
gallons and tons of water, and then they shipped it. So, when I grew up, I started eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah,
So I,
yeah,
I didn't get away from the chemicals at all. They still were haunting me,
yeah,
even when I moved. And again, these are areas that, because no one read the paper, no one saw what was going on. That's what we do. We do that level of research.
yeah. Oh man, it's just like I find myself. It's so discouraging. It's like you just assume that what you're consuming and in contact with is toxic at this point, and there's not really much you can do about it, but it's like that
Right,
shouldn't be the case. There, one, it shouldn't be toxic. Two,
right,
there should be something you can do about it. And so I think it's just easy to like it's all kind of it's all kind of fake until it's not,
right.
and I think to brush these kind of things off, to not put your name on the list if you qualify, to not look into it is just foolish because the day might come where it's knocking on your doorstep type thing. Um,
Well, And I agree, and that was sort of my idea for making the name lookup thing free. I mean, at least give it a shot. And there's another element. If you don't find your name, put the information in. It's still free.
Yeah.
We will continue to look in different ways to see if we can find it in other indexes that we have. We just can't put those indexes online because they're really hard to read.
Yeah.
And so we probably got another 100,000 names that, unfortunately, when the government contracted or did the scanning themselves of these newspapers, they did a horrible job.
Yeah.
Some of the newspapers are so hard to read, they're so blurry, they're
Mm.
messed up. OCR software won't scan it at all. I actually paid humans to sit
Wow.
and read through the things that we knew the OCR missed.
Wow.
We had the OCR actually color everything in blue that it saw, and it laid everything else just stayed in black that it couldn't. And then I paid people to say, "Can you read that?" And they're like, "Yeah, I can read it. I'm an expert at this kind of stuff. I
Wow.
type fast and I can do it." So I paid them a ton of money to sit here and do this. And they're still doing it today. Actually, to the left of me, there are people online sitting here going through different areas of the paper going, that name was not scanned, so I'm going to put it in. So
Under
we have the only database of the Camp Lejeune newspaper available on the planet, period.
And I imagine they've got to be citing, the date of the newspaper, or the page of the newspaper. They got to make sure they can re-find that name. Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also give the government doc number. So we went one step further and said, this is the doc number assigned by the government. So when you get to court and they say, well, artificial intelligence, somebody can make this up, but no, that's the doc number right there.
Yeah.
And if you want to go look it up, and you can't search for it, but you can look up that doc number and it'll show it.
Interesting, man. Yeah, I know. I remember when I was at Camp Pendleton primarily,
Mhm.
and
Sure.
I remember, everybody's like, there's like the stereotype of the water. It's like, you don't drink base water. I was on another base for a while at Pease in New Hampshire, and they had a history of water contamination too. But like people would like kind of joke about not drinking the water, but then it's like, well, what else am I gonna do? I need water.
Right.
And
Right.
they'd throw the filters on it, and like the light would be red for 6 months, and they would never change the filters, and yada yada. So I guess I'm curious, what other bases do we know have a history of contamination? Um, are there any other bases that are on these litigation lists that we know of?
That I know of, no, not on this type of situation. Now, Agent Orange,
Yeah.
I know, was just expanded
Yeah.
to include US bases, one of them being close to me in Aberdeen. But you had to be there at certain times because they experimented with Agent Orange. And I happen to know, and he just died of Parkinson's, unfortunately,
Mm.
a friend of mine, a good friend of mine. And he worked as the truck driver that drove things back and forth. And he was in Germany, but he also was at Aberdeen.
Wow.
So we're actually trying to look back into that to get his records further so we can see if he was in Aberdeen during that time, because they've opened it up for the Agent Orange situation. But
Gotcha.
none that I know that's at this level,
Yeah.
which expanded over such a long period of time and, was involved in so much contamination.
Yeah.
I mean, people never thought about, and it's in one of our evidence reports too, at chemicalcasualties.com, is the ice plant. They made ice. They made ice for drinks. They made ice to water down soldiers if they got too hot. They made ice for injuries. For the hospital, used most of the ice. The mess hall used the second amount of that ice. And then you went to the NCO club or whatever like that. They put the ice in your drink.
Yeah.
400 tons of ice was stored at Camp
Mm.
Lejeune. And during the summer, they made 20 to 30 tons every 20 hours. And that comes directly from the paper. Think about that.
Unbelievable. I admit my suspicion when somebody tells me it's clean now. Like what? Who? How do we know that like the 87 is the cutoff?
No, I don't believe that at all because the steam plant had 51 miles of piping. Okay, that's a lot of pipe. Okay, and you can't tell me right. You can't, and again, documented in the paper. The You can't tell me that 51 miles of pipe, whatever it was made of, did not absorb a lot of those chemicals. And even if you said, oh, okay, we clean the water at the source, you didn't clean the 51 miles of pipe.
Yeah.
You
Or
replaced that.
replace it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and and to say you got it out of the aquifers completely is ridiculous. You know, I mean,
Almost like what chemicals did they use to get it out of the aquifers? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I
No,
mean,
no. The worst part is they just cap the wells,
and
so all
and
it's going to do is migrate.
you just drill a different well
Yeah,
that's into the same body of the same aquifer underground.
yeah.
And that's like, like, so what, do I qualify? I guess like we're talking about this 30-year time frame, but that's only technically what's available for the current litigation. Check back in 20 years to see if your time frame has been included, kind of
It out.
thing.
Yeah. Well, I have actually one of the, and it's our logo. This is one of the coffee cups from Camp Lejeune, and it was actually used. It had the coffee stains in the bottom and stuff like that,
Sure.
and we actually used it as our logo. It's an original. I won't drink out of this thing.
You
That's not
won't drink out of it.
no.
How old is that coffee cup?
I'm not sure when it came out, but I'm assuming it's probably from maybe the 60s or 70s.
Wow.
It does have Armed Forces China on the bottom.
China. I don't know. Were we making stuff back
Well,
in?
not China, not China, China company. So China also meant porcelain back.
Got it. Got it.
Oh,
Got it.
and it does say Armed Forces, and I believe it's in. I can't really read that. Maybe you could take a picture of it and tell me where that is. The other thing I had, and this is a duplicate. I had one of these when I
Yeah.
was a kid. When I was a kid and I was in Camp Lejeune, I always dressed as a soldier for Halloween and
Sure.
did like that. And my dad gave me his canteen.
Hmm.
These canteens were refilled by the buffaloes, which were
Right.
water containment things, right? Which had the contaminated water. And I would fill this thing and drink out of it all the time. This is a duplicate of it. I mean, this is from Camp Lejeune also, but the one I had rotted all away and everything because I was like 20 years old. My mom says, I'm throwing that away. I think the mice ate all the fabric.
Mhm.
But I used to drink out of it and keep it. And you think about how many people sat and did. They can't even get this one open.
Yeah.
Who did that. But as a kid, I still drank out of that. And like you were saying, I'm sure that residue was still there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So is residue still there? Is it still in the places? Could we have gotten rid of it all out of it? Did they take out every shower,
Yeah.
that it went to and everything? I seriously doubt that.
Are people basically given, if they file, they're basically given the benefit of the doubt. So if they were impacted, they were there, they, worked at whatever, place they were exposed to the water and contamination,
Yeah.
and have, some disease, but maybe that disease is also hereditary. I don't know if they're,
Sure.
is that a thing? Like, do they just then, because all these other variables are, they apply to this scenario and they were exposed?
Well, in my case, I mean, sometimes Parkinson's runs in families, so that does happen. In my case, no one has ever had Parkinson's in my family, so I'm the first to ever have it. But certain diseases do run in families, but because of the way chemicals work on the genes, these things can be suppressed and never come to fruition at all.
Yeah.
But all it takes is a chemical or something to create that problem and to make it happen. So regardless of that, that's case with most chemicals can cause that kind of issue.
Can chemical contamination that causes Parkinson's in you
San Diego.
create a hereditary past, your like, does it morph a gene where then that gets passed down? I mean, is that like, can this contamination potentially impact?
In fact, my son
Yeah.
something else. We don't know.
I don't know. Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know. However, I can tell you that it is my belief and my understanding that we know that there was a gender switch in 1958 when I was born. We know that happened. That's documented in the paper. Um, the only person who controls who your children are is you, a male.
Mm.
So it has to affect,
Yeah.
unfortunately, us
Yeah.
and our sexual organs because we're the ones who give the X and Y chromosomes.
Yeah.
So it has to switch it somehow. It has to cause that problem. So unfortunately, there, that can continue.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Fair. I'm also curious what pool of money do these settlements come out of?
Ocean.
The printing clips, they just turn it on for these kinds of things, and
yeah. Well, before we go any further, this says San Diego. My son looked it up here. So
okay.
San Diego, actually there are no, at this time there are no limited funds. It is not coming out of the military. The government says they are sourcing it within the government, whatever that magic means.
They're really good at sourcing new money. So
yeah, sourcing new money. Maybe they're going to send a bill to China. I have no idea.
Got it.
But at this point, there is no limited funds. So again, if I was, I'm not wasting any time here moving forward because maybe at some point some congressman or senator will say, well, maybe we need to put a cap on that.
Yeah.
But at this point, no. So as long as that exists, I would move quickly. Myself, that's what I did. I would recommend everyone else, the 750,000 missing people, or their relatives, to move quickly to get at least registered and use a site like ours to do research from the point of view that you need evidence walking in that door. Yeah. And if your father or something maybe has, Alzheimer's or dementia or something, he can't remember necessarily things of where he was or something like that, then using a source like us helps maybe find where he was, okay, and helps with that. If they passed away, you need that. A huge area is scrapbooks. Go to your scrapbook, and if your father's scrapbook, your mom's scrapbook, whatever, try to see if everybody clips out something, right? Yeah. If they clipped out something they were in, whether it be a football game or whatever, if that picture, you can send us with your phone. We have a special service for it. You click it with your phone, the front and the back of it. You send it up to us. There is a charge for that. But what we do is we reverse search it. We go through those 42,000 pages and look for matching imagery. Wow. Once we find that, then we can put a date to it. I can put a doc number to it. And you can walk in and say, this is what my dad had in his scrapbook. This is the paper. Yeah. We're done.
Yeah. Wild. So let's spend a few minutes as we wrap up talking about your website that you made and the services that you provide and how people can get involved.
Yeah, sure.
Your website, chemicalcasualties.com.
Correct.
Is where anybody can
spell it wrong as you spell it, chemical casualty. I registered that one too. I expect everyone.
Smart man. Yeah, cover your bases.
Exactly.
Yeah. So take it away. Make sure that we all understand what it is and how to use it and what how it works.
First thing I would do would be to come in and go to the button that comes up first, which is a free search for names.
Before we get started, I didn't prep you for this, but if you're able to share your screen, those that are watching on YouTube, they can kind of see a walkthrough if you want to kind of do a demonstration.
Do you want to do a demonstration here? I'll have you jump on, share the screen. Yeah, I'm having my son drive in here.
Perfect.
I'm the one with Parkinsons and have the shaky hands.
Fair enough.
I may go to the wrong website. We may share way the wrong thing. Give him a second here. But as he's doing that, essentially there's multiple things that the website does. We have it priced out, accordingly to how much labor we have to do that. We're not actually charging for the publications or anything like that. We're just indexing it and telling you where to find it. So we're like Google Advanced.
Gotcha.
And
So the free part is to basically find a name.
right. Let's do that. I'm going to have him see if we can do this here. He's not turned on. Okay. Host isn't allowing multiple presentation sharings of the meeting. Okay, turn that on.
This might be my fault. I wasn't prepared for this either.
Yeah, well, you started.
All right, how about try now?
Okay. Okay. All right. Can you see us now?
Yep.
Okay, so there's my ugly face there on there that explains things. And I try to explain things at each point. So you just click on free name search when you get here. And you scroll down. This explains how to use it. I'm just going to type in my name, Burnett. And last name, again. It doesn't have to be capitalized or anything like that.
Okay.
And hit it. And within 1 second, it has everybody. All the Burnetts. You can scroll through this really fast there, and you can see how many. It shows the year and everything. Now, the idea is you get smarter because you start seeing how they're listed.
Yeah.
So you can see right here is a J.R. Burnett. Okay, in 1960, my dad was actually there. But in this case, J.R. Burnett in this particular spot is spelled with an E. Mine is not. The one up here at top does not have an E. But if we keep going down, or we go to 58, I think you're too far down. Yeah, go back up. So if we go to 58, that's me right there. So my name was fine because I was a baby at that point. Okay. And, I was in there in that particular spot. Okay. But that's how you find it. And once you click on that, okay. So if I say I found it, okay, and now it will pass us to a form. And from that form, it takes the name that it found and it asks you to clarify, again, your first name and everything like that, other information, the suffix, nicknames. These are important. They had a lot of nicknames back in the 50s and stuff like that. I even found Pee-wee. Okay. So, and a lot of times this is in the sports sections. Okay. So those are important things we can search on. Were you in the military, a civilian, or a contractor? Every one of those people can get compensation. Very important. Okay. So don't look at it that dad was in the military. No, dad worked on the base and he was electrical contractor. He qualifies. Then we asked for the years of service when you were there. If you had 2 tours, that's fine. And then we asked, where were you? Because this becomes important to additional reports. If you are in certain spots, then that's going to affect you. And then we give a free form area for people to fill out. We get all their contact information. We do not give out contact information. We do not ask you to sign in. We do not ask you for a password. This is once you're in and you're done, we contact you from then on from email or talk to you on the phone. That's it.
Gotcha.
So we're extremely secure in that regard. And do you have a lawyer or don't you have a lawyer? Okay, that's specialized in Camp Lejeune. Once you hit it, we do charge $295 to continue the research to get you the PDF and everything like that. But we passed on to you, and I think you have it, the code, which you can give out, which will give them a 33% discount on this.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll make sure that is available and known to everybody listening.
Yeah, let everybody use that code. They don't need to use it to do a search or anything like it. That's free. But we also do like the photo form where we turn photos, that might look like this. Okay. This is from the paper. And this is showing one of those ducks. I always call them ducks. They were these vehicles back from World War II. Lejeune was famous for having these on the beach because they were given them. They didn't know what to do with them, so they gave them to the lifeguards.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, they did. The lifeguards used them. They'd take the lifeguards out, throw them way out there, and say, swim back.
That's hilarious.
But if you see this one here from this angle, this particular spot is Mr. and Mrs. Strange is their name.
Mm.
Um, and they were identified in here. But what I wanted it for was the angle, because that's the same sort of angle here. It's a 1 year difference, so it's got the canopy component on it.
Yeah.
But that's me.
Oh, interesting.
So
Yeah.
I'm the baby on the beach.
Wow.
Okay, right there. And so with this type of situation, if you had it in a scrapbook like this, and this is what the scrapbook looked like, these are Girl Scouts and Red Cross people who train there for 10 weeks in the pools.
Wow.
So they qualify also. And we found the exact paper where they were at. We have all the information, we have the page, and we give you the lead page too. So you have everything you need to march in the court and say, this is the clipping, this is the rest of the information.
Wild. So basically, what they get for the 295. So or minus the discount. Um, they can search their name for free. They see that their name comes up or their dad's name comes up, and then you can fill out the questionnaire. And when they fill out the questionnaire, you've got this database of all this evidence. And
Correct.
effectively, the fee is to associate your name with all the evidence.
Yeah, essentially, we have to go through then and create the PDFs, double check our work,
Yeah.
and make sure we're getting everything right. It also gives us an opportunity once we learn more about that, because we might get more out of what they pick and find where there's other incidences of that name. So they may only see one, but we may see others, or we may know of other evidence that we can gather with that helps them. Or the whole idea is to have them walk in the court and win,
Totally.
not lose. That's the point.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And then we do charge for these special reports too, which are basically like, unfortunately, people tasting the soup, the steam rooms and all these kind of things they use to press the military uniforms. These people were there 8 hours in steam, pressing that. And so we talk about who these people were, their names and stuff like that.
Mm.
Bottle feeding was very popular when I was born.
Mm.
So all the kids got bottles and the water came right out of the faucet.
Man.
So it's pretty brutal in some ways. This is the Girls Outnumber Boys. It's Girls Outnumber Boys 1958. That is literally right there in the paper.
Incredible photo.
Yeah. 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 And so it really depends on your situation. We can do more research. It's harder for us to do research if you're not found, but you got to realize that again, this is the lottery.
Yeah.
Of you're taking a small chance, but the return is huge.
Pay to play. Yeah.
What you get, to me, it's as long as you qualify for the 30-day thing. At that point, you're only after more evidence. The more you can get, the better situation you're in. Period.
Yeah. Well, either they can, pay the whatever it's going to be after the discount, called, $200 or something like that. Or they can.
Yeah, after this guy actually goes under 200. It's like 190.
Beautiful. So they could pay $200, or they could just spend the next couple of years of their life looking through all the evidence that you've spent, months, if not more, looking through.
Oh my God! It took about 6 months to build what we did. And again, like I said, there are literally, like I said, they're still online here. They're sitting here going through stuff, continuing to fine tune it as we go along. Also, I should mention, if we don't find a name, but you register, and that's free. If we don't find a name and you still go through the registration process, there is no price. We maintain what you put in. And as we're putting this in, we rerun that. We have like a data find you program, which is a thing I developed a long time ago. And we use that to just sit there, and it just sits there and hunts. And it'll go through our data over and over as new things get added. If it gets a hit, it'll then come back. We'll say, here's what we found. I did this with one of the lawyers I was working with, and I took a picture of what it was without giving him the rest of the information. And I said, isn't that the name you're looking for? Guy like fell off the chair. He's like, oh my God, that's it. Yes, that is what I'm looking for. Okay, I said, get your MasterCard out. It takes a lot of work, and I put a lot of money into it to get it to work. But considering the return, of what you get, and again, it's not a lottery in that respect. That as long as you have the 30 days non-consecutive that you were there, you're in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a question now of winning, what you win, not if you can win.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. This has been very enlightening for me. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure others have learned a lot too. And so hopefully, I'm confident that I'm not going to be on that list, nor are any of my
Hopefully not.
blood relatives. So I'm not not a beneficiary of your system, but I
Right.
appreciate you putting that together for people, and they can go search their name or their family member's name,
A
and
friend, a relative, whatever. We don't care how many searches you make or what you do.
yeah,
Just come do it. That part's all free.
yeah, absolutely.
ChemicalCasualties.com. Yeah, don't worry.
ChemicalCasualties.com. Awesome. I'll make sure that's in the show notes. And if anybody has any questions for Mark, where's the best way to reach out?
At ChemicalCasualties.com, you go there. My phone number is right there. You can call us. If I don't answer, I'll call you back. If you just want to help us, we have a GoFundMe page, which is in the right-hand corner. Click it. You can help us another way.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time, and best of luck in this endeavor. And I hope it all shapes up for you.
I hope it shapes up for everyone who gets involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Mark. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode with Mark. I really hope you learned as much as I did on this topic. It's a serious topic, and it wouldn't surprise me. I know that a lot of you are my age. You're either in or recently out, and you may think, oh, this doesn't apply to me. This is years ago at Camp Lejeune. I didn't spend any time at Lejeune, and I'm way too young to have been impacted by this. But the chances are there are other bases that are currently contaminated. There's constantly spills. There's constantly new chemicals being found that shouldn't be ingested and that are. And so I think kind of wrapping your head around to this and maybe preparing for, the day that that does apply to you, it would be wise. And so I think checking out his resource at chemicalcasualties.com is beneficial no matter what. And I think, obviously if you find your name on there, or if you find, your mother's, your parents, whoever's name on there, and you want to go pursue more evidence to file a claim, whether it be for yourself or in the state of your loved one, I think it's worth pursuing the evidence and including yourself in this claim. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a lot. Feel free to reach out to Mark, chemicalcasualties.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. See ya.